What's up, everybody? We figured we'd finally drop our best anime list after we said we'd do it a few days ago, and now we're about 100 followers past where we said we would release the list.
Yeah,
So,
you know.
so here's our first 10 entries. This video is for people who saw our list and either hated it enough to need some sort of explanation, or were interested enough to want to hear what we have to say about the series.
I don't think that many of our picks right now are that controversial.
People get mad about a couple of them, I think.
For the first town?
Yeah,
Really?
I think
Okay.
so. I think
Okay.
so.
Well, I don't think too many people will get annoyed at Katana Gotcha at 25 unless they just think it should be significantly higher, but it's not super popular, so
They've probably just not seen it.
yeah, I don't think a ton of people have seen it, but this is just a fun series. Like
I haven't seen it.
you
so I don't
should
know.
watch it because it's just Nishio Isin writing dialogue, so obviously it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
But
sure.
then it's just a really entertaining episodic series, but they have like 50 minutes to do their episodes, so you don't have a lot of the weaknesses of most episodic series where they can't develop their ideas that are contained in one episode because
Okay.
they have more time.
Yeah, that's a
So
fair
they
point.
can do it fairly well. And then it's sort of like Monogatari is just kind of weird, you know?
Yeah.
Katanagatari is like him proving that he can write a normal story. And
Interesting.
it works.
Okay. Yeah.
It's still very dialogue heavy, but then I don't want to spoil like too much in terms of talking about it thematically, but it has this really interesting idea of like what is a sword and sort of looking at like is the main character a sword because he just
Kills.
follows the will of somebody else.
Okay.
And then it's like how much are we all swords and who is our wielder? So it has this interesting sort of thing going on with it. And then watching the main character sort of take in all the perspectives of the episodic villains because he hasn't interacted with a person before the show starts
Sure.
and sort of take in all their perspectives and get a more complete and human look at the world is fairly interesting, and he developed very well throughout the series. And that's all I have to say about Katana Gatri, I think. Oh, the main dynamic, the main two, they're great. They have so much on-screen chemistry. I love them. And I think
Alright.
that's all I got for Katana Gatri. So
I have not seen it, so I have nothing to add.
all right. Well, I haven't seen this one, so
Yeah.
now you get to talk.
So this is probably the only series in the lower half or so of our list where somebody told me that this is the best anime they've ever seen. I would say, sure, that makes complete sense to me. I have no argument. I think, to be honest, the only reason that I have this not higher is because I'm not sure that I understand everything in this. I think that there's a lot that you could, if you wanted to really dig into and create some sort of strong, cohesive thesis on the meaning of these little vignettes that make up the series. I wish that, and I haven't seen the precursor series for this, so if you see that as a flaw in my perspective on this series, then fair enough. So I haven't gotten the totality of the medicine seller's character, but he isn't developed all that much throughout the series. But I really like how it's presented, the idea of if it's the form, shape, and the name, I want to say, of the Mononoke as these three things you need to find in this recurring Japanese idea of a spiritual monster that represents psychological conflict is really interesting. But what really needs to be talked about with this series is actually first the fact that it's actually kind of scary, at least a little bit, especially for an anime, because it's, in my opinion, pretty impossible for an anime to be scary.
I think they could do-
I wasn't afraid, but
I think they could
but it
do
had
some like
the-
psychological horror, but they
Yes.
can't do like standard like gore or anything like that.
No, and it doesn't try to, but it is a little unsettling at times, which is its goal. But getting back to the main thing I want to say about the series, obviously, is the visuals. The art style of this is just mesmerizing. I think it's probably the best art style I've seen in anything. It's gorgeous, and the way that they use the art style is just phenomenal. One of the clear examples being in the scene where the medicine seller has these three men smelling different, I think they were herbs, and they go in this weird head trip type of trance, and the colors of their body and then what they're experiencing like cascade through different shades to reflect what they're feeling.
So it's like JoJo.
No, no.
Change their colors.
Yeah, and how it relates to their experience and inevitably the information you find out about these men, I thought was super well done, and that's a consistent theme throughout the show. Is just this fantastic use of somebody's using the toilet here, but this fantastic use of color and just a phenomenal drawings, art style. It's just a gorgeous series to watch. I was entertained visually, even if there wasn't any story throughout the entire thing. So Mononoke is great. If you have this rated higher, I have no arguments against you. I think that's completely fair, but I wanted it to be on the list for representation's purpose.
Very fair. Cool. That all you got on Mononoke?
Yep.
Then moving on to Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
You
Best show of all time.
Yeah, well, you said we wouldn't have any picks and wouldn't piss anyone off. This is going to piss people off.
You think this is going to piss people off?
Yes, I think
It's a
this
really
is going
good
to piss
show.
people off. It's a really good show, I agree.
it's at
but
23.
it's the consensus best anime of all time.
But
And we
it's-
have
but we
it
have
at 23. Yeah.
It's good. It's good. I like it.
The show's really good. I like the show more than you,
Yes.
but I do see the point, and I think it is the case with this show, where to be something that is sort of the consensus number one, you have to be more flawless than you are masterful, than you are exceptional. FMA doesn't really have any weaknesses outside of it just doesn't go above and beyond in any way.
Yeah.
It's a rock solid show on all fronts. There are good characters. There is a good story. There are good themes. There's good animation. There's good sound design. There's good directing. But I wouldn't really want to call any of these all that great or exceptional.
Nah, I wouldn't
You know,
either.
in any sort of category of best anime villains, best anime main characters, other than maybe side characters where I would want to put Roy, I wouldn't really put anything from Fullmetal Alchemist in one of those lists.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those jack of all trades, master of none shows. I mean, to talk about like the positives a little, even though you like it more, and I'm just going to steal the credit for talking about the positives.
Sure,
of the
yeah.
show. Like,
Well, I feel like we covering this show being good is less the thing
Yeah.
that the burden is on us for. It's more
Yeah.
why don't we have it higher?
yeah,
But
very fair. But I mean,
the show's incredibly entertaining.
Yeah,
I loved
absolutely.
watching it all the way through. I wasn't bored for a minute.
I think it's very interesting where it's like people will sometimes bring this up as one of like the best endings ever, and I don't necessarily.
Really?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree, but
Never heard that or even thought that would be a possible thing that
I
people
would.
think.
But I very much remember
The ending was very okay.
I very much remember finishing the show and being just completely satisfied.
Yeah,
There is
ending
just not-
was good.
This show's just like a story and about as good as a story can be. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a story. It's good. I don't really blame anybody for having it higher.
I think if you like, how do I word this where I don't sound pretentious?
How do you say if you see more anime, you'll have it lower without saying that?
No, that's not what I meant. I was going to say, if you don't engage with TV like much more personally, if it's strictly this is for entertainment.
This is for entertainment, yeah.
Then I can totally understand. this
If you
being
watch
very
TV,
high.
if you watch TV and your sole goal is just to be entertained,
Yeah.
then I understand why this would be the best anime for you.
Absolutely.
But we are very much making this list based on sort of the quality of art.
Like artistic merits beyond.
Yeah, like
just
the
entertainment.
vision. Yeah, the vision that was set out by the person writing the show and
Yeah.
how it was communicated through the art form of anime and the significance of it and its themes, writing.
How impactful it is to us.
Yeah, visual expression of these emotions and ideas.
Yeah.
But
Moving on to the Rosa Versailles, I think the show's in an interesting spot on our list because I think that it's not super popular, being a shoujo anime about the French Revolution from 1979, but also everyone who's seen it loves it. And I'd include myself in that. I think the show's fantastic. But I think everyone who's seen it probably thinks it should be higher, and people who haven't seen it are like, what the hell is this? But I really would urge pretty much anyone to watch it, where it really does remind me of some hugely popular works, some hugely acclaimed works, stuff like Berserk, Legends of Galactic Heroes, Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood. I think that the how they do the nobles drama is very similar to the Golden Age arc of Berserk. I think that Oscar as a character and how she comes into her own as a leader really reminds me of Reinhard from Legends of Galactic Heroes. And then I think the plot and how consistently entertaining it is and how ever expansive it is really reminds me of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And of course, the plot's great. If anyone knows the history of the French Revolution, it's an all-time story. There have been countless stories about it, and this one is also fantastic. I think the inclusion of the fictional main character, Oscar, is also great. I think that getting everything from her perspective and being able to have not necessarily a perfectly historically accurate view on things allows us to take a more modern approach to some of these past events where, of course, issues in the French Revolution like class struggle are still an issue today. We also get some more modern issues like Oscar's internal gender struggle, and we sort of get to see how the similarities and differences, we get to compare and contrast these two different forces that are dividing Oscar, as she is a noble but sympathizes with the commoners, but she's also a girl who was raised as a man. And it is just so interesting. She's just great. She really drives the show, and I think that seeing her grow from age 14 to her early 30s is just so great. I don't think we see that in a ton of characters. We really get so much of her life, and we get this little piece of history that she has, and I think that's fantastic. I think that people compare the show to Utena a lot, and if you've been following us, you know I love Utena, and Oscar definitely was an inspiration on Utena, but where Utena does one thing super well, she's 14 the whole time, and she very much goes into what a 14-year-old girl would be struggling with. I think that Oscar touches on a lot more things, and if that's your preference, I could see you really loving the Rose of Versailles. But I think that's all I have to say about it, but absolutely watch this show. But I think that's it.
Continuing on.
Moving on, Magicka Magicka. This show's so fucking good. If we're talking
FMA is better though.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Yeah, if you guys are unaware, we all each had our separate lists, and then we averaged together our rankings. So neither of us are happy with this list.
Yeah.
But my love for Magicka Magicka trumped Mark's love for FMA, I guess.
No, I have no problem with the Magicka being over it.
Magicka Magicka's great.
It is exceptional in something, whereas I don't
It is.
think FMA is. This show is visually amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I don't know how to talk about the show without spoilers. I mean, everyone knows at this point that it's, if you don't, turn off the video, but everyone knows at this point that it's a much darker take on the magical girl genre, which has been done before, but it's great. It does it really well. That, episode 3, it works. I don't love it and the stuff before, but everything after is fantastic. I think that it develops its themes really well, and while being a story that's more thematically driven than plot driven, it still has a fantastic plot. Where, I mean, I know you disagree, but I would say the plot rivals FMA here. At this point in the list, I think the mystery of what the magical girl is.
To be honest, yeah, I was thoroughly entertained watching this the entire time.
Yeah.
I think I watched the whole thing in one sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the plot is fantastic. I think I'd take Homer over Roy. I don't think you would.
I would not. No, I think
I'd take Homer over Roy, but I mean, do you think they're close?
Close enough.
And then if we're talking about efficiency in writing, if we're talking about who gets more focus in their show, especially with the movie,
Yeah.
Monica's great.
Monica's great. I think that my biggest criticism of Monica the show is Monica the character.
That's fair, but
We'll touch on that when we get to a different show, but
no, she's not a very strong protagonist, but I think
She's not.
she serves her role decently in terms of what she comes to embody by the end. I think that...
But to be in a cast of 5 actual characters and be the... I would probably say 4th best character.
I got her 3rd on this list here, but...
I would take your 4 over her. But fair enough.
But that comes down to our difference in what makes a character.
Valid.
But the show's
very good.
damn good.
It's damn good. It's an enjoyable watch that's worthwhile for anyone who is a fan of anime, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, if we're talking about like flawless shows, I think the show's also fairly flawless.
Yeah, I don't really have any major complaints with it. The writing is really good. Again, the visuals are exceptional, especially in the presentation of witches. I think that's such a creative and just vibrantly strong way to show the emotions that are encapsulated in the idea of a witch. I think that the sound design is good. I think
the soundtrack's great.
Yeah, I think the characters are good. I really don't think they're exceptional. I do think they're good. And yeah, just all around good show.
The one thing I did say on the slide for the Instagram post is that if we ever get a Rebellion sequel, I could easily see the show jumping way higher.
Yes, I agree.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Rebellion opens sort of a new can of worms, and I really like Rebellion. I wasn't even really thinking of that when I've been talking about this here.
I think the series wraps up nicely. It has this nice little statement on what it's trying to say. It's fairly optimistic, and then Rebellion takes a fucking dump on it.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah.
And if they resolve that well, because it opens it up to be a much more unique show.
Yeah.
Whereas we often say I
like how you just censored yourself from saying shit, but you also said fucking. That's amazing.
Whereas we talk about we've seen the story of the show been done better before. I don't think I've seen what Rebellion opens up done better before.
That's fair.
So yeah. I think that makes the franchise stand apart from other similar shows. But then if they ever finish it,
can't wait. I'd watch that movie immediately.
I don't have much hope, but I really want it to happen.
We'll see what Shaft does with their money. Honestly, pretty much anything.
They don't have any.
Yeah, but anything that if they ever find some fucking money, anything that they could do, I'd be pretty happy with.
That's fair. If they want to do off season, they want to do Rebellion too.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Moving on.
Vinland Saga.
See, I'm watching the show right now.
Yeah, you are watching it right now. Yeah. How far are you?
I'm still just at 4 episodes in. Okay. It's good though.
Yeah, the show's good. I think it's pretty immediately gripping. I don't know if you would agree.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, especially from the beginning, I like the sort of how the swords in their society represent their ideas of war, where you have Thor, who's this big pacifist guy, and then you have everyone wanting to go to war with him, and then you see these scenes of families passing down their swords, and it's sort of how ingrained war is in this society that is, at least their little village is fairly peaceful, but it's still just on everyone's mind. Yeah. And everyone's just consumed by it. So I thought that was introduced fairly well in the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
But I'll let you talk about the actual show.
I don't have a whole ton to say about the show. I think that Vinland Saga sort of takes what we've been saying about being a good show without any real holes in it, but pushes it another step forward. I think I would probably take Askeladd as the best character of the shows that we've talked about so far. But his ideology is just super interesting. And you're talking about this idea of swords and what are you fighting for? What is war versus peace to you? And then obviously the show centers a lot around the idea of revenge. And I end up in a lot of anime discussions about Kurapika because I think Kurapika is so fucking overrated. And people use an argument for her. Jesus, for him.
Well, technically, in the manga, they don't have
a gender.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
A specified gender.
Which makes sense. Yeah. The argument for Kurapika being that he understands sort of the uselessness in the revenge and sort of wrestles with that concept, and I think that Thorfinn does it as well. But I like how Thorfinn does it more because it's more subtle and the visual representation of it I think is stronger versus Kurapika, who really only has that internal conflict, A, very explicitly, and B, for a very brief period of time when Kurapika thinks that the Phantom Troop is all dead when they aren't. But I love Thorfinn's cycle of revenge. I think he is one of the better written revenge-based characters that I've seen, and he's not even the best character in the anime because that's, of course, Askeladd. But their relationship is super interesting and super compelling. And then you throw Thorkel into the mix, who's just such an exuberant, entertaining character who just steals the spotlight every time he's on screen because it's so goddamn fun. And then Canute, who has such a strong character arc and so much growth and becomes the sort of thematic and ideological center of the show, especially when you go through these scenes where I actually don't remember if Canute's a guy or a girl. That's like a conflict in the show. I don't remember what the answer was decided on.
Well, good, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet.
Fair. So it's
You
not
actually
actually that
know.
I actually know. I just don't want to spoil it.
Exactly.
And then Canute gets into this scene with this sort of drunken priest, and they get into this really deep discussion that ends up being this thematic heart of the show. And it comes just in time for the last sort of arc, if you will, and then the final episode, which is phenomenal. It has a 9.9 on IMDb. It is the fourth highest rated thing on IMDb. I don't think that it should. I actually do think that the ending of this show is a weaker version of an ending of a different show in anime. I don't want to spoil for you what that is. You can probably think of what I'm talking about if you've seen both, though.
Are they both on this list?
Yes.
Okay.
They are both on this list.
So someone will be able to figure it out.
Someone will be able to figure it out if you're watching the list. And you have any idea what type of ending Vinland Saga has. I was thinking, Scott's going to figure it out, but you have no idea what the hell this ending is, so...
No, I mean,
Yeah.
I know that the manga continues, so...
Yes, the manga continues.
We should mention that you are anime only.
Yes, I'm anime only. I'm sure if I read all of Vinland Saga that it would be higher, because people toss it around with the likes of Vagabond and Berserk, which would place very highly on this list for me. But
And I think we're just considering the anime of what we're talking about, except for with one exception on this list.
yes, with one exception, because it cuts mid-arc. The anime cuts mid-arc.
Two exceptions.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
That too, but
Yes.
Moving on. Code Geass.
Code Geass. Yeah.
This one's a weird one to talk about.
This one's a weird one to talk about. We haven't seen it in a long time.
We did watch those recap movies.
We did enjoy them. Oh, yeah, I did enjoy them.
Because
I love Code Geass. I
Code
think the
Geass
show
is fantastic.
is sensational.
I love this show. I just watched it when I was 14, and I worry that sort of teenage power fantasy got in my head. But
Yeah,
at the same
I do
time-
think Lelouch is a little teenage power fantasy.
He absolutely is.
But he's still a phenomenal character.
Yeah,
in his
he's
own
well
right.
done. And I think that the fact that we watch those recap movies does help my opinion of the show, because I watched those when I was a little older, and I said, okay, I still enjoyed this story.
Yes. I think, especially looking at this top 5 characters list, I think that the cast is a little shallow. It does. I think
It lives
you've
and
said
dies
this,
with Lelouch.
Yeah, lives and dies with Lelouch. He is the focus of pretty much everything. I think Suzaku has a bit of a identity crisis, a bit of a character arc that he goes through. But honestly, I'm not sure how much I like him as a character, because he's true in his ideals to a fault.
I mean, that is part
Which
of
is
his
part
character.
of his character. No, I understand.
There are
I
characters
understand.
that are like that we rate
Oh,
very highly.
I'm not saying I don't like him, meaning I think he's a bad character. I'm saying I don't like him.
Oh, yeah. I don't
Yeah, I
really
just
care
don't like
for him
him.
either. But...
And the Callan is sick.
yeah.
The show's interesting. I really enjoyed it all the way through. It was consistently entertaining. And this is probably another one that we have to defend why we don't have higher. I think people really like Code Geass.
I think it's become
Less so than FMA, though.
I think it's become sort of a controversial take where some people are like, yeah, this is the best thing I've ever seen, and other people are like, yeah, this is like a 2.
Yeah.
We're more towards that this is the best thing I've ever seen side of the argument.
Yeah.
But
It's pretty damn good. I wish that it had a little bit more like thematic and emotional development. I thought, and I hadn't seen Evangelion when I first watched this, I thought the conflict with Charles, with this idea of the collective unconscious and putting everyone in this state
This,
of nothingness.
instrumentality.
Yeah, and in this instrumentality, I thought was super compelling and interesting, and I was intrigued that they did it at all. And then when I watched Evangelion and saw that they did it, that took away a bit from my feelings towards that part of the show.
see, that part just didn't really strike me much when I watched the show. I also watched the show before I watched Evangelion.
Yeah.
So it just didn't really strike me all that much. I think that I've heard people complain about the plot of this show, but I love the plot of this show. It's great.
It's honest. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of assholes, but it's upfront about it.
Yeah.
You know that that's the type of show that this is gonna be,
Absolutely.
and you go through it. And
I think it plays into like the theatrics of Zero.
Yeah, there's a very cinematic show.
Yeah.
It's a very over the top maximalist presentation, and some of the tactics are still really good. And it can be annoying when you're watching a show that's built in these hard and fast, rigid ruled tactics, and then someone has this ass pull where they just make it out alive. But I really feel like situations where that happens, you should almost be expecting it. It shouldn't feel cheap. Like, if Lelouch is in a situation in the middle of a season where either he dies or something happens to save him, obviously he's gonna get he's the main fucking character. Like,
Yeah. And I mean, he does have his own hacks.
yeah, exactly. There's a lot of
So I feel like a lot of them
there's
are
a lot of
laid
hacksy
out
bullshit
in the beginning of the show.
Yeah. I mean, the show's great. I can't really blame anyone for having it higher, but again, I do think that there are better representations of things that Lelouch stands for, and this idea of do the ends justify the means, which is sort of the central idea of his character.
Yeah.
If you think of all the war, the Euphemia thing.
I think it touches on some interesting things with quote unquote the 11s.
Yeah.
And,
the identity aspect of it is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think that
its thoughts on sort of racism and imperialism, I thought, were pretty well done.
Yeah, I think that how they question Lelouch's relationship to the cause is fairly interesting.
Yeah.
Like whether or not he's
really doing it
gives a
for
shit.
him or for them. Yeah, I agree.
I think it raises a lot of interesting questions. I don't think it necessarily always gives you the answers to those questions, but
Sure.
I can understand that being someone's preference.
Yeah,
And I think that if that is your preference, I think this show's fantastic.
sure. Okay, let's keep going.
All right. Speaking of not getting fucking answers, Serial Experiments Lane. Show's fucking bonkers.
Show is it's confusing as fuck.
This show's bananas.
So we watched this together. And
that was a great experience.
which
That was probably
great.
our best watching
that was our best
together
rewatch,
experience.
Yeah. And after at the beginning of every episode,
Or present day.
yeah,
Present time.
at the beginning of every episode,
I love when we do things where we're gonna get made fun of for them.
yeah, but we don't care. At the beginning of every episode, I think it's the fourth time I said that. We said this show is gonna make sense. It's gonna make sense in this episode. This is gonna be the one we're gonna get it. It's all gonna click. And then we finish the episode. Like, nope, doesn't make a goddamn shred of sense. And it happened all the way through the fucking end.
Right around like episode 9, we lost hope. We're like, I don't
Yeah.
think this is gonna make sense by the
Yeah.
end. And we got to the end, we're like, this didn't make any fucking sense.
Show makes no goddamn sense.
Oh my god.
It does.
It does.
You just got to think about it for like a couple months.
Sure.
You got to let it marinate.
It's definitely a
Fester.
show you gotta stew on.
It's a show you got to stew on. I don't think you could finish this and give it a rating immediately. I don't think that would be reasonable. But we also had that sort of conundrum where we watched this and we thought it was all right, but too confusing, too all over the place. And then we watched Ghost in the Shell and we thought that didn't explore or explain anything that it touched on.
And it touches on some really similar things.
and it's very similar.
It made us appreciate Lane a little more.
And then we watched Blade Runner.
So
which
bad.
was I'm not a movie person, but Blade Runner was awful.
Oh, so bad.
And that made us really appreciate Lane because it did everything Blade Runner did 1,000,000,000 times better.
And it's so I love how Lane's presented. We're just
The atmosphere, the tone.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, it's great. The use of lines and shadows in the visual
the shadows
presentation.
are great, just like how they're shaded.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But I meant like in terms of just the laser focus on Lane's character, and you just explore everything through her psyche.
Yeah.
It's impressive that they're able to do that so well with so few words.
You're right.
There's
yeah.
not that much dialogue in this
Yeah.
show.
There's a lot of visual, emotional representation.
Which is something that Blade Runner tries to do and
fails.
fails. Whereas Lane...
Because Harrison Ford, who is a good actor, has like the worst acting performance ever.
Yeah,
Which,
but
I'll stop
we
shitting
don't,
on Blade Runner.
we don't have that problem with Lena Wakara.
No,
she's great.
She is great, yeah. I love her as a character. I think she's adorable.
She's cute.
She's so fucking cute. Her and her bear onesie, oh my god.
People are gonna think you're the
No, I want her to be my daughter.
People are gonna
I'm
think you're
24.
me.
I want her to be my daughter.
People are gonna
But-
think you're me. I'm the degenerate one who's talking about the daughters, the anime
The
daughters.
daughteru?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the daughteru. It's got to be a term.
But yeah, the way it expresses its themes is super interesting and unique. What I really appreciate about the show, and this is kind of spoiler territory, so I'd recommend skipping about a minute forward, the idea of how a god would relate to humanity.
Yeah.
Because that's essentially what she is. She's basically a god in that she is the one controlling this world of the wired, which is akin to the internet of today. And if you were someone today who controlled the internet, you'd effectively be a god.
Yeah.
And she has this lack of relationship to people, so she makes herself a person. It's almost mimicking the idea of God creating Jesus as an image, a human image of himself to save the world, but she's doing it just to understand the world.
And I think we do get a fairly good conception of the world through that lens.
Yeah.
Which is something that really sets the show apart.
Yeah, and I really like the show. I think the show is super memorable, to say the least.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So let's keep going.
All right. So Cuchu Barranco, I just finished. This is easily the worst show, or not the worst, the most confusing show I've ever seen.
Oh, okay. So my accolade for Lane was false.
Oh, no, sorry, not confusing. Weirdest. It's not that confusing.
Oh, okay.
It's fucking weird.
Yeah.
It is so weird.
I haven't seen it, man. I don't know.
It's so
Saw
weird.
you.
But basically, yeah, the show is structured, since I'm sure most of you haven't seen this show. The show is structured, there's this psychologist, and each episode focuses on one of his patients as they come into his office to deal with some psychological issue. And it reminds me the most of the Twilight Zone, which is a really weird comparison. But each episode structured as this little mystery where you're trying to figure out what is the central cause of their psychological issue. And it did a really good job where I just didn't predict it a single time. And it was really engaging to try to figure it out every time. And every episode I'd just be thinking about it for the next day. And it was just something weird. But then what really set the show apart is the last episode. The last episode's fantastic. I wouldn't say if you hate the show to begin with, you should stick it out, because the show is episodic. You kind of just enjoy it as you go. But the last episode ties everything together into this really beautiful message about how we view mental health. And speaking of how we view mental health throughout the show, there's this actual psychologist who comes in, who just tears through the screen and explains whether what is happening is accurate or inaccurate, which I thought was really interesting.
What the fuck?
I thought it was really interesting, though. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
I think that's an important thing to do.
I can see that being done well.
Yeah, and I think it ties in with the conclusions the show makes on how we view mental health.
Huh.
And I thought it was fantastic. If you like shows with a lot of style and a lot of unique elements to it, this is absolutely a must-watch. This is just so strange. But it's done really well.
All right.
Yeah.
Word.
The show, I got rid of our top 5 characters here to just do top 5 episodes, because there's no recurring characters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Except for the psychologist, who isn't really a character. He's just weird. So moving on. Gurren Lagann. This show's so fucking cool!
Yeah, the show's just fun as fuck.
This show's so fucking
This is a
cool.
fitting endpoint for this video, too. Just
Yeah.
kick off or end the first video with just a Gynax show.
Gynax is so sick!
Yeah, but
Gurren Lagann is
Gurren
one of my
Lagann is
all-time
so fun,
favorites.
yeah.
It's so fun all the way through. I mean, I think it dips a little at different points, but
yeah, I think so.
the climaxes of the 2 main fights, to me, absolutely make up for it. I think Simon's just a really interesting character. And what I was writing in the Instagram slide, which I guess I'll touch upon, is if you were to describe this show to someone, it's the most generic thing you could possibly say.
Yeah.
But it's just done perfectly. They just streamline the show so well, where they cut out anything unnecessary. There's no complex power system. Spiral energy's nonsense.
It's complete nonsense.
It's complete nonsense. They just completely do away with anything unnecessary, and they tell this classic story structure that everyone knows, everyone's seen, everyone likes
the
to
hero's
some degree.
journey.
Yeah, and they just tell it to perfection.
Yeah.
It's the best example of this structure I've seen, and it's great. And I think it's a fantastic look at a healthy male adolescence.
Yeah. A healthy male adolescence, the development into a leader, the sort of humility and compassion for others that a leader needs. And then the relationship between Simon and Kamina is gorgeous, obviously. Trying to avoid spoilers here and talk about the show, which is kind of hard.
It is kind of hard.
Yeah,
I
it's
wrote
kinda
in the
hard.
themes that it's partially about reconciling pride in yourself with an uncaring universe, which like kind of gets into spoiler territory, but I think I'm vague enough.
Yeah, you're vague enough, but
But I think it does do that fairly well, which
Yeah.
is a theme I think that is rarely touched upon in this show.
yeah, especially with the whole idea of the anti-spirals
Yeah.
and sort of what they represent and what that final fight is.
Yeah.
The ending's just sad to me, though. I
think-
find the ending to just be sad. I finished the show, and I just felt empty inside.
I don't know about that.
And then I watched all of One Punch Man in a day, the next day, and it was the greatest experience of my life. We don't have One Punch Man on this list, which is a fucking sin, but
Hey.
I should have put it. I didn't have it on my list either, but
One Punch Man's fun.
yeah, One Punch Man's
Yeah, this show's great. This is just one of those shows you just gotta watch.
yeah. You just gotta watch. It's a vibe.
Yeah, it is.
It's a vibe.
Gotta
yeah.
watch Gurren Lagann.
Gotta watch Gurren Lagann. Yeah.
It's just
It's not really a show that you deeply analyze. You just enjoy it.
you just enjoy it, but it just does do everything it does well.
Yeah.
I don't
It
like,
does everything it does well, but it is sort of that exceptional point
Yeah.
that we were talking on. I do think Simone is an exceptional character.
he is.
Yeah.
But it's weird because it's so simple, it's so generic, but it's just so good.
I think the fights are exceptional too.
There.
Yeah, the fights are exceptional.
So on that note,
some of the emotional points are pretty
Yeah.
great too. Yeah.
absolutely. On that note, are we
Yeah.
cutting this video off?
On
This is
that
by
note,
far
we're-
our shortest video.
Yeah, this has got to be our shortest, especially anime video. This
Yeah.
is quick.
So
But yeah,
gotta say,
cutting it off for the day, and then we'll be back with what 5 through 10 or 5 through 11, 15 through 11, something like that.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
something
All
like
right.
that.
Well, row, fight the power.
Yeah, fight the power.
Yeah.